Last night, this player resume brought to you by Indeed. It's used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. And it's just one of many performances that he's had this year, which is probably going to net Garrett Cole a heck of a lot of money in free agency this offseason. But we'll talk about that. And now the Final Four of Major League Baseball with our ESPN baseball analyst. He's Tim Kirchin, who's kind enough to give us a couple of minutes here. Tim, it's Dan Graca. Thanks for joining us. Is this not a fun time of the year or what?
Well, it's the best time of year, Dan. We just had 3 winner-take-all games in like a 24-hour period, and it doesn't get any better than that. And now we've got a league championship series with 2 teams that combine for 110 wins. It can't get much better than that either. So there's nothing better than October baseball, and we are right in the middle of it.
Absolutely. But before we talk about the better here, we know that it can't get much worse out in L.A. We talked a lot about it yesterday. While I have you, though, just wanted to pick your brain on that. What sense do you make of what went wrong for the Dodgers here? Who are you pointing the finger at in terms of blame? Is it Roberts? Is it Kershaw? Which way are you kind of slinging the vitriol towards for what went down there at the end of their season?
Well, that was a team effort, and you got to give a little credit, of course, to the Nationals that maybe something really special is going on there now. It's bizarre how baseball works. They have all these terrible Game 5s, and then suddenly they pull out a Game 5 of their own. I mean, there's so much blame to go around. Dave Roberts did not have a good Game 5 as the manager. Clayton Kershaw gave up back-to-back home runs on back-to-back pitches. He's never done that in his regular season career. He's done it twice in the postseason now. And let's not lose track of the fact that the Dodgers struck out 64 times in that series. And even though it's a strikeout era and everybody strikes out today, the Dodgers have been one of the outliers there that they take a little tougher at bat, and yet the Nationals pitch them really, really well. So bottom line is this is a devastating loss for the Dodgers, and now they're going to have to figure out what to do to win the World Series next year, since they had a team in place to do that this year.
Absolutely. 106 wins, nothing to show for it, especially getting bounced in the first round. It is going to be a long, long offseason for that baseball team here. So the Nats, as you said, move on. And look, we know all the talent this club has had, Tim, for so many years. They were never really able to bust through. They finally broke that door down the other night in winning a round. But this is a dangerous group here going into St. Louis. And I've gone back and forth with this series, just kind of thinking about it here over the last couple of days. This is easily a coin flip as far as I'm concerned here, but this should be a heck of a 7 games between these two squads.
Right, and I think it's a coin flip also. I think Game 1, which is odd to say for a 7-game series, is pretty critical. Let's say Anibal Sanchez, who pitched awfully well against the Dodgers, let's say he throws a gem and wins Game 1. Now you've got Max Scherzer on full rest, Steven Strasburg on full rest, and in theory, Patrick Corbin on full rest. And those are that's the threesome that everyone in the National League feared, having to run up at those guys back to back to back. And that's what the Cardinals will get. And if Sanchez can give them a 1-0 lead, I think that changes the look of this series even more. Plus, those 2 guys in the middle, Rendon and Soto, have swung the bat so well right now. They might be the best back-to-back hitting twosome in the postseason right now, which is really saying something.
And they don't miss Bryce Harper too much, do they? You know, that was what everybody thought of when he left to go to Philadelphia. I mean, shoot, let's Rendon and Juan Soto, give me those guys any day of the week on my team over Bryce Harper. Let's face it, those guys are lethal. Question is, what team is Anthony Rendon going to be a part of next year? Because he's going to fetch himself a heck of a lot of money on that open market. But you're absolutely right about Anibal Sanchez. He has been a great, great contributor for this team this year. This is a guy who looked like his career was over maybe last year, and he's really settled things down for them. You get that first one tonight, as you said, then you turn it over to your studs with Scherzer in Game 2, Strasburg in Game number 3. Since that 19-31 start, Tim, which everybody kind of speculated would maybe cost Dave Martinez his job, Nationals are 78-40. That's basically winning 2 out of every 3 games. You do that the rest of the way, you're going to be holding a trophy.
Right, and that's what I mean, that something special might be going on here. They make this miraculous recovery during the season. They were in line to lose the wild card game and made a stirring comeback. They were down 1-0 and 2-1 in the Dodgers series, and then behind 3-0 in Game 5 against Walker Buehler, and somehow found a way to win that game. So those kind of things add up. They build momentum. So this is a pretty impressive Nationals team right now.
And on the flip side, though, you look at this Cardinals squad, and I know they haven't been in the playoffs for a few years, but historically, all they do is win. I mean, this team has been in the NLCS now for how many times in the last decade? You know, it always seems like they're flying under the radar, and they find a way to get the job done, just like they did against the Atlanta Braves here in this series. And he got a couple of guys, Wainwright, who was brilliant there in game number 3, didn't get credit for the W, but he was outstanding. Yadi Molina, who had a couple of huge hits for them in the game 4 there. I mean, these are just proven, battle-tested warriors that it's no surprise, once again, playing a big role in a team that might go to a World Series here.
Yeah, the Cardinals have a similar arc to the Nationals this year. I mean, they were one game under 500 in the summer, and they turned it around quickly. Most people didn't give them a chance to make the playoffs, and they ended up winning the division. It's a very competitive division. So they're playing with a great deal of faith right now also. And then when you get 10 runs in the first inning of a postseason game, a historic performance, that starts to lead to, all right, what's going on here also? So could be dueling destinies, who knows, in the National League Championship Series.
Tim Kirkjian, our ESPN MLB analyst, joining us here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. You mentioned that game, the clincher for the St. Louis Cardinals the other day with the 10 spot in the first inning. You have any issue with the way Mike Schilt approached things with Jack Flaherty, only because he left him in that game a little longer than maybe some other people wanted him to, and now you only have Flaherty for Game 3 in this series against the Nationals?
Yeah, I mean, we debated it on the air, off the air. I don't think Mike Schilt had much of a choice unless he was going to literally take Jack Flaherty out after one inning, and I don't think he felt comfortable doing that. I mean, I would have never pitched him a sixth inning. I'm not sure the point of that. But I think if once you get to 4 or 5, then you're pretty much sure he's not going to pitch until Game 3. So I think it was a tricky spot, and I think given the competitive nature of the game, you have to say, all right, he's our starter. He warmed up. We're going to pitch him 5 innings. It's debatable what they did, but I still don't think if he'd given him 4 innings that he'd be starting Game 1. That was too quick of a turnaround.
Lineup-wise, so on and so forth, when you look at the way the Cardinals should approach this thing here, we know that Matt Carpenter, for example, who, you know, Mike Schilt couldn't wait to get him out of the game there after those 10 runs the other day because he's a defensive liability. We know that his value there is with the offense, though, and I think that the Cardinals do have a decided edge in this series over Washington when it comes to catching the baseball. Do you think that that's going to factor into any way as to how he's going to go about mapping up that lineup?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You know, the Cardinals have been a subpar defensive team in recent years, which is a reason they didn't make the playoffs, and they're demonstrably better now defensively, and that has to happen if the Cardinals are going to win, because they don't have the lineup that they've had in the past. They don't have those bangers in the middle, even though, you know, Goldschmidt and Ozuna have been pretty good in the postseason. They need to do more. So this is Cardinals' deal, run prevention, and but not having Flaherty till Game 3, questions in the bullpen. Their defense has to be better than Washington's if they're going to win this series.
Because I still think the edge in the starting pitching category has to go to the Washington Nationals. And look, Dave Martinez is going to look to ride these guys as long as he possibly can, because while St. Louis might have a little bit of an edge when it comes to the bullpen, which I think is pretty decisive, we know that Dave Martinez probably only has faith in maybe 1 or 2 guys that he can trot out of that bullpen. That's why the Scherzers, the Strasburgs, Corbins, you name it, he's going to see if he can get maybe 7 innings out of those guys each and every time he gives them the baseball.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt the Nationals at full strength have better starting pitching than the Cardinals, and that's again why this lineup really works for the Nationals with starting pitching if Sanchez can give them something really good in Game 1. So right out of the chute, we might know the direction of this series based on what we see tonight.
And you could hear every pitch on ESPN Radio, of course, this evening between the Nationals and the Cardinals. 8:08 first pitch as a matter of fact. Now flip over to the American League side, and we get the two heavyweights. We get the Yankees. We get the Stros. Houston goes out there. They put up some early runs for Garrett Cole, and then he just takes them home here, as you would expect an ace to do. And again, the flip side with that, the only negative is now you have Garrett Cole only in game number 3 of this series. You get him in a game 7 if it goes that long, but the Astros now are going to have to piece this thing together before they get to Cole. How much confidence do you have in this situation? And let's say Zach Greinke, who's probably going to get the ball game 1 here.
Yeah, I have great faith in Zach Greinke. He's their third starter, but he's way better than that. And even though he struggled in his last start in the postseason, and some of his postseason numbers are not flattering, I have great faith that that guy knows exactly what he's doing, and he's not going to be afraid facing the Yankee lineup in game 1. Plus, you got Verlander back on full rest for game 2. So I still think in some order the Astros starting pitching is in great shape. Would it be better to go Verlander, Cole, Verlander? Of course. But 3 and 7 still is a pretty attractive situation for the Astros and Garrett Cole.
Now, on the flip side, you look at the Yankees, and Aaron Boone's going to have some decisions to make as to how he lines up his starting rotation. I mean, generally speaking, we know Tanaka, Paxton, Severino, those are his big 3. Order them how you want. Which way do you think you would give the ball if you were Boone as to how you were going to map out at least those first 3 guys here?
Well, I think he's going to go with what he did in the Twin series, and that's Paxton, Tanaka, Severino. Maybe that makes sense. Tanaka's been better at home, and therefore he'd have to pitch on the road. But he's got several options, and given he's got the bullpen that he has, Aaron Boone can do all sorts of creative things. He can make sure Severino just gets out of there after 4 because that may be his limit for being overpowering. Maybe he pitches Severino before that. Who knows? But with that bullpen, he's got great flexibility and versatility, not to mention great power arms coming out from the 5th inning on.
Severino, we've only seen him a handful of times this year because of injuries, and for a long time we were really unsure if he was going to be able to contribute to this team at all, but he's back. I thought he really bared down in that Game 3 against the Twins, got out of that bases-loaded jam there in the 2nd inning. Have you seen enough from him now, Tim, to where you could say, all right, I'm comfortable giving this guy the baseball, maybe even stretching him out to, let's say, 100 pitches in his next start? I think he's only maxed out at about 85 or so since he's been back.
Yeah, 100 is a bit of a stretch, but his changeup slider combination is really good right now. It's not as good as when he threw 80 pitches, 56 strikes, and threw 5 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts. But I think that guy is capable of giving them 5 really good innings again. And to repeat, with that bullpen, if he can give you 85 pitches again, 5 scoreless innings, and then give it to Canely and Green and everybody else, that's a pretty good formula for the Yankees.
We'll find out what the roster is going to be tomorrow morning, but do you think that Aaron Boone maybe takes a page out of the Tampa Bay Kevin Cash playbook, let's say, for that 4th game? You know, I'm sure they're a little reluctant to maybe start Happ, or maybe they have a quick hook with him, whether CC Sabathia is on this roster. We saw how well the bullpen matchup game worked in Game 4 for Tampa Bay in the previous series. You think the Yankees could do that with the wealth of options that they have in their bullpen?
Yeah, well, anything's possible now, which we've learned from this postseason and from postseasons in the recent years. And yes, the opener thing has worked very well for the Yankees this year, especially when Chad Green is your opener. But I could at least see a scenario where CC Sabathia is added to the roster and either starts a game or plays a role in, say, Game 4, pitching somewhere. So these are difficult decisions, but they're good decisions because the Yankees have a bunch of options.
All right, bunch of options here. And the last one when it comes to the roster is Aaron Hicks, a guy that we weren't even sure was even going to be able to play again this year with the elbow. Turns out he's fit. He's ready to go. Unfortunately, with Aaron Hicks, it seems like he's hurt every 5 minutes. But is that a guy you put right back in the lineup Game 1, Tim, or are you maybe more leaning towards if it ain't broke, don't fix it when it comes to this Yankee lineup?
Yeah, I personally would not mess with the success that they had, and I would keep it the way it is. I would add Hicks to the roster, but I would first have to see exactly how sharp is he, how rusty is he. Always remember, though, Aaron Boone loves Aaron Hicks, as he should, because he's a terrific defensive player. He's a switch hitter, and he can do a lot of damage. But if he's not ready to go, then I don't think you take him and throw him right in the middle of the lineup when he's got to face Greinke, Verlander, Cole. I think you got to give him a little bit of time to figure out exactly what he's got as opposed to not have.
Tim Kirkton, ESPN baseball analyst, joining us here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Another addition to the managerial vacancies, Philadelphia. They part ways with Gabe Kapler after 2 seasons. Sounds like that this was really motivated from ownership, right? I mean, Matt Klentak, it sounded like he maybe wanted him to return, but John Middleton, who, threw around stupid money, as he put it last offseason, they didn't achieve what they thought they would this year. Did you get the sense that maybe you had some conflicting powers at play here when it came to Kapler?
Yeah, and I think that's standard in today's game. With our young, really smart general managers and some old school managers and owners and everything else, there are going to be collisions on all sorts of things. And the analytic age is a tricky one. It's a complicated one, and I think the Phillies are the perfect example. I personally think that they need a veteran hand in that dugout. They need a Joe Girardi, Buck Showalter type, Joe Madden, Dusty Baker, that type of manager. They veered off course, at least for me, a little bit the last couple of years, not just because of the manager, but the entire approach of the organization. They can get that back, but I think it needs to go into the hands of a manager that brings some experience and some wisdom to the dugout on a daily basis.
You got 2 teams now in the NL East looking for skippers, Phillies, Mets. If you had your pick of the litter, what job do you think is more appealing, more attractive, the Philly job or the Met job?
That's a great question. I think the Philly job is a little bit more attractive because they have an owner in Philly that has, as you just said, is willing to spend money. And I think there's a little bit more talent there, not in the rotation, but throughout the team in Philadelphia than New York. Now, the Mets job is a good job, don't get me wrong. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd take the Phillies, and I'd be pretty happy with either one.
Joe Girardi, do you think he ends up in Chicago? There's a lot of people in New York on the Mets side of things that would love to bring him over, maybe just add a little bit of spice to that Yankee-Met rivalry. But we know that he's from Chicago, played for the Cubs. Is that where you think he ends up?
I'm not sure where Joe Girardi ends up. I just know he's going to get a job. He's either going to get the Met job or the Phillies job or the Cubs job. And I'm not sure I can even handicap it at this point because all 3 of those jobs are really good jobs. So Joe is in a great position to have his choice, I believe. And it should be real interesting to see which way he goes.
We have seen a shift, though, over the last couple of years in baseball, right, when it comes to the hiring of managers, where maybe teams are starting to move away from some of those more established guys, the big personalities, egos, ones that are going to have a lot of say in the clubhouse and really throughout that organization. They want to go maybe towards the ones that are lacking in experience and kind of organizational type of hires. Do you think that continues here moving forward? So, the Girardis, the Bucks, the Dusties, is there still a place for those guys in the game?
Well, I think so. I think we've gone too far the other direction.
I agree.
And even though some first-year managers, Alex Cora, when I say first year, I mean first-year major league managers, Aaron Boone, Alex Cora, A.J. Hinch, those guys have done fantastic jobs over the last 10 years. It's just I think there's still a place for a veteran hand in the dugout. I think we have devalued the manager in recent years. I don't think we pay them like we used to pay them, and I think they should have a bigger role than they do right now. But we know in the analytics age, the front office has a lot to say with it, and they have a lot to offer. But I think when push comes to shove, I'll take a baseball man who is experienced in the craft of managing in the dugout. And I think we're going to start to see a shift going back to that, a slow shift, but I think this offseason could present that.
Well, Tim, from your lips, I would love to see that. Nothing more would make me happier. I mean, put the computers away. Well, there's still place for the computers and the data and all that stuff, but sometimes you got to manage with your gut. And I think we're getting away from that a little too much here in Major League Baseball the last couple of years. So we're speaking the same language as far as I'm concerned. Last thing, who's playing in the World Series?
Well, I picked the Astros to beat the Dodgers at the beginning of the postseason, so I'm going to stick with the Astros beating the Yankees in an epic 7-game series. And that's not to say the Yankees can't win, because they can win the World Series. But I'm going to take the Astros barely over the Yankees. I'm going to take the Nationals barely over the Cardinals, and I'll take the Astros over the Nationals.
Hey, if we get those two bareleys, that means that's a lot of fun for baseball fans, which means they're going to be really, really good series. So let's hope we get some good ones here over the next couple of weeks. Tim Kirkjian, our outstanding ESPN baseball analyst. Appreciate it as always, Tim. We will catch up soon. Enjoy the baseball. It should be a lot of fun.
Okay, Dan. Thank you.
All right. 888-SAY-ESPN is our telephone number, 888-729-3776. Now's your chance to get in on some talk about these league championship series coming up. We'll also do the NFL and the college football before we get out of Dodge here on this Friday afternoon. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN News.
Your radio, your computer, your phone. Or just tell your smart speaker to play ESPN Radio.
Now playing ESPN Radio.
Take ESPN